My name is Pamela Roberts, and I am the child advocate with Douglas County District Attorney's Office. I am a actual graduate of Clark Atlanta University from the Whitney M. Young School of Social Work. So go Panthers! And that's my role in the office.
I'm Tanya Corbin. I am the Crime Victims Compensation Advocate in the Douglas County District Attorney's Office, and I help victims of violent crimes apply for the Crime Victims Compensation Program.
Hey guys, my name is Jessica Moore. I am a sophomore mass media arts major with a concentration in radio, TV, and film. And today we're just going to be talking about crime victims and how you have an advocate and for child advocacy. So my first question is, what is Crime Victim Rights?
So this week is Crime Victims' Rights Week. It's a week that we honor is nationally recognized. So during the week of April the 7th through the 13th, organizations from the nation, around the nation, do different things to honor victims that we've serviced. This week we had a mass media outburst. So thank you to Clark for allowing us to come and share what we wanted to talk about. Different things. This morning we had a breakfast. We honored our victims with a breakfast. Our DA, his name is Ryan Leonard. He's the DA for Douglas County, Georgia. And we did a catered breakfast reception to honor our victims and just to show them appreciation. So we had it catered from Waffle House this morning, and we served over 150 people. So
Yes.
It was a good
In addition to that, over the past week that just passed, we also went into the high schools of Douglas County to speak to different classes about Victims' Rights Week, to get the word out. We also spoke with them about some of the laws that govern juveniles and some of the crimes that may impact them, how they can report crimes, how they can help someone who they know who's been a victim of a crime get in touch with us at the DA's office, and that pretty much anybody, anywhere who's a victim of a crime, there is an advocate in the DA's office. You just gotta figure out who that person is sometimes, but we are there.
Okay, my second question is, what is a crime victim compensation? And could you talk about the compensation programs?
Okay, so a victim, we can define what a victim is, and that's a victim who has had a crime perpetrated against them, or an alleged crime that was allegedly perpetrated against them. If we have a deceased victim, the survivors of the deceased, that means parents, spouse, children, grandparents, we consider them as victims. We service the families if we have a deceased victim. And so, saying that, Crime Victims Compensation Program is a program that all the states have it. Our state has a cap up to $25,000, but it only benefits a person of a violent crime, so it's not a person of a property crime. And so the compensation, what it does, if you're a victim of a violent crime, let's say someone was attacked, they pay up to $15,000 in medical or dental expenses that will reimburse the victim for out-of-pocket expenses that occurred during their victimization. If we have a deceased victim, the program pays up to $6,000 in burial reimbursement, so they can help the family bury their loved one. That's up to $6,000. Counseling, if someone witnessed a violent crime, like if there was a mass shooting, like we have campus mass shootings, and someone witnessed that, even a person that witnessed the crime or a person of a victim of the crime, they can apply for a benefit of counseling up to $3,000 in counseling services. And then up to $1,500 in sanitation services, crime scene sanitation. They reimburse for that. And also, if someone is a victim of, let's say, a DUI crime, and you're driving on the highway and someone hits you and you're out of work, you've been working, you're out of work, they pay up to $10,000 in loss of wages. And they pay up to $10,000 in loss of support. So when we say loss of support, you may have a victim that is a domestic violence victim, in which the perpetrator was the primary breadwinner for the home, and now he has assaulted her or she has assaulted him. That perpetrator is in jail, and now what is the person to do? Their bread just went to jail, so they do pay up to $10,000 for loss of support. There's a lot of documentation that takes place, but if we do get that documentation, we have helped domestic violence victims get up to $10,000 in loss of support. So that's what the crime victims compensation program in a nutshell does.
Okay, so to the both of you, what does your job entail? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
So I am what's called a child advocate, and my role in the DA's office is I get appointed to all felony level child cases where children have been victims of crimes. That's where they may be in a domestic violence situation and they get injured as a byproduct of their parents having a domestic violence situation, child molestation. It could be direct child physical abuse where they are the person who's being perpetrated against, sexual abuse. I also right now have a kidnapping case. Thankfully the child was returned to his parent, but the case still moves forward from there. And so any felony level of crime where a child is a victim, I get appointed. Part of my services as that child advocate is to help that parent through that process. Sometimes when your child has been a victim, you don't know which way to turn, what to do. It's an emotionally charged time. And so part of my role is to come in and kind of calm the emotions down and help them to kind of think strategically of what they're going to need to get through the whole prosecution process from beginning to end. And that could be referring them for counseling services, linking them to services that they need as far as informing the school social worker that this child has had a traumatic experience, so to handle the child with care from this point on as far as the school system. That's something that was developed with the school social workers in Douglas County, where we can earmark a child if they've been a victim of trauma, where we can say handle with care. So the teachers get informed who service that child in the school system to say, if you see some type of behaviors occurring that are out of the norm for this particular child, it's because this is what has happened to them. So as that's in the community. As far as in the courtroom, I go to court with the victims. Sometimes you have kids who are old enough who say, no, I want to be in court when the case goes to trial. And so I make sure I give them an empty tour of the courtroom first, so they can get familiar with it. I show them where the jury sits, where the judge sits. I explain all the different parties that they're going to see, and I explain that they will see the person who committed a crime against them, which we refer as the defendant. And I give them different tools and techniques they can use so that they're not re-traumatized, so to speak. Sometimes I had a little boy, he loves motocross, so I told him you could bring a small motorcycle with you, but you just have to keep it down low where nobody can see it. So that was one thing. You have like little finger toys or things that they can hold on to, and because unfortunately children have to testify in their trials sometimes when they go to trial. I most recently had an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old who had to testify about the physical abuse they incurred from their foster parent. So the adoptive parent at that, yeah. So and one of the things is that once a case, it may not always go to trial. It may end with what we call a plea. And the plea is where the defense attorney for the defendant and the prosecutor have come to an agreement as to, here's the crime, this is what we're willing to offer as far as consequences, as far as time, prison time, and they come to an agreement to say, okay, this is doable, and the defendant decides to plea as opposed to taking it to trial. And so when those things occur, we still have a hearing where they confess the crime and they answer for the charges. I had a case where it was a child molestation case. It was 4 victims, and so I had the jury box filled with their parents and them because they wanted to see it, and it was kids ranging from the age of 8 to 14. And the defendant got 70 years. And so that's a part of the healing process for those children, to see that person be consequented for their actions, and it helps them to be able to move forward. So.
Do you ever get attached to the kids?
I do. Depending on the length of the case, our cases can go anywhere from as short as 6 to 8 months to as long as 2 years. And so this last case I had, they got in my heart because they had been around for a while. It was a pretty bad case. The 6-year-old almost died because of the physical abuse he endured. And so the fact that to see where he was and then how he recovered and where he is today, day, it just makes you feel good. Like, okay, I had a little part of his healing process.
Okay, now what do you see?
So it's 7 of us in the office. We have a director of victim services, and then we have 6 of us. And so we have 3 that are assigned to all our 3 superior courtrooms, and so they're assigned to that courtroom. So every case that has a victim that comes through each courtroom they're assigned to, they service those victims. And so Pamela, she specializes in child advocacy, and so my specialty is crime victims compensation. So once a case comes into the office, let's say she gets a case and she says, oh man, this person was sexually abused. She already knows they may qualify for some type of counseling, something. So she will refer further people to me. So I get a case and I reach out to the victim. Let's say we have a deceased victim, I'll reach out to that family, and it's like one of the hardest conversations you want to call.
Yeah.
Someone just was murdered and I'm calling you like, hi, but we got this benefit, but it's a reality. So funerals are expensive. Somebody suddenly was taken from this earth. So what are we going to, so I'm trying to alleviate some of the pressures of the family. So I'll call the family and I'll introduce myself, tell them what I'm trying to do, tell them about the program, because $6,000 it's a long way. So so now the program requires them to have a death certificate for them to even qualify. I try to alleviate all those type of things from the family. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna get the death certificate, because a lot of times when you have a murder, a death certificate could take up to 6 months to get it. And so now they're like, wow. We can't get the death certificate. So every week I'll check with probate court to see if the death certificates are available. And then sometimes we have victims that are not computer literate, or they don't have a computer. I go out and I have my little iPad. I go out and I do it on the computer, let them sign it. Bills, so a lot of medical bills, if they can't scan the bills or they can't send them, I'll go and I get them, and I say, well, I'll upload them and I'll send the bills to the compensation program. And everything I do, I try to alleviate a victim from having to worry about stuff. You worried about other stuff, so I try to alleviate those type of things. But and I go in the community and do speaking engagements to try to, just like this one, just try to notify people that there is a crime victims compensation program. When I was, I'll tell you how old I am, but when I was 20, I was assaulted by a boyfriend, and I was in another county, and no one ever called me. I didn't know nothing. I had to go to the hospital to get stitches. Nobody ever called me about a crime victims compensation program. I didn't know nothing about an advocate. I didn't know if it was a felony or a misdemeanor. The joker hit me with a flashlight. So now that I work in the DA's office, I know it's a felony. But no one contacted me. I didn't know anything. And so that's what my mission is, to try to get this word out, especially with us, with our black community. We don't know about it. Yeah. And so like if a funeral home gets their money, they know about it, but if they're already paid, they're not going to tell you about it.
So they get double paid sometime.
Not double paid. Well, even if they get double paid, we want to let the family know you can be reimbursed up to $6,000 for that. So it's just about getting the word out there. And
the next question is, what rights do crime victims have?
Okay, we have there's some core rights. Yeah.
Or what are the main rights that?
So the main rights are, a victim has a right to be present, and so that means to be present with anything that has to do with the defendant's court cases. That's from the beginning. That means a bond hearing, arraignment, plea hearing, sentencing, trial. They have the right to be present. They have the right to sit there, and everything that goes on in the courtroom, they have the right to be there.
They have a right to be notified. Be notified of everything that takes place. Sometimes there are things called motion hearings, or there's another event called a preliminary hearing. We don't send mail notices out. What we do is we phone call them to let them know, hey, this is taking place. We explain to them what the type of hearing is. If it's a motion hearing, we try to the very best of our ability to let them know what the motion is about. We try to gain their input in the situation, so that they are aware of what's progressing when they're not able to be in court.
They have the right to be heard. So when we first get the case into the office, we send a victim impact statement let them write that down. We help them with their victim impact statements because they have the right to be heard. If the defendant is seeking some type of bond, they have the right to speak. They don't want them to have a bond, or if they do want them, we have victims that come like, oh, we want him to come out. They have the right to say that. We don't try to tell them, no, you need to go in there saying you want him to stay or her to stay in jail. They have the right to say whatever they want to say. They have the right to be heard during sentencing. When if someone is found guilty or if they plead during the sentencing phase, they have the right to be heard in court, and they can tell the defendant and let the court know how the crime impacted them. Then a lot of the rights, they're in statute. They're in our statute. There's a victim bill of rights that is in the Georgia statute. And now that Marsy's law, it took effect January of this year. The voters voted in Marsy's law. Marsy's law came and covered all the rest of the crimes except for misdemeanor property damage, property crimes. But now it gives a victim a right. If they feel that their rights have been violated, it gives them a right to file a motion in court 20 days after the violation to be heard. What is it that you need to be heard? And so that gives them that right. So it gives them more access to what's going on with their case, because a lot of times different victims deal with what happened to them differently. You may have someone who just had a penny stolen from them, but they all in. They want that, I mean, they in there, you know, and then but we treat them all the same.
Right.
Yes, we have more severe cases, and yes, it just depends. Like, I'm just compassionate about someone who loses somebody. That's my, you know, I'm just hurt by that, and so I try to see about the family. I try to do whatever I can, you know, to help them get through that process. And Office of Victim Services sends out a theme. They come up with a theme for every year that we do this. So I feel like honoring our past is honoring the ones who paved the way to make these rights. Ronald Reagan wrote a bill, that's the VOCA bill, which is the Victims of Crime Act. And so it started from there. So we have different things that took place, and so that's honoring the past, and then create hope for the future is to try to progress from that. Just like what happened to me in the past, I don't never want a victim to go through what happened to me in the past. And so we try to get more innovative ways to try to service our victims, how to get out there. I'm just so appreciative that y'all let us even come here to talk. I came here, right? You know,
Yes.
I did a little research with Clark Atlanta, you know, and I went online and I saw, okay, victim services, where are they victim services department, you know, and I didn't see one. So I don't know if I didn't see one. And so I feel that it's very important for the student body to get with the administrators to try to get a student service center. Georgia State has a big one. They have a website. They have everything for any student that is a victim of a crime. Come to them, and they have advocates there. That's what an advocate does. They plead for the case of another. So advocates that can guide you through the criminal justice system. A lot of people don't know what's going on. That's what we do. We explain it. We guide them through it. And so I think that is something, as far as a Clark Atlanta University student, I think that the student body should get together and ask, why don't we have a victim services unit?
Yeah, and the other thing when we were discussing too was I said there should be a connection between your on-campus security and Atlanta PD, because you all fall within the Atlanta city limits. So therefore, there should be some type of communication going on between your chief of security and, you know, the chief of this district or this particular zone, as far as what type of crimes you all are seeing on campus and the best route to address those crimes. So as far as reporting the crimes, yes, you do utilize your campus security, but depending on what type of crime it is, also a police report should be done with the Atlanta PD in regards, so that it can progress when a person is a victim. So therefore it goes to a DA's office and they then get assigned a victim advocate.
And then if you do go to APD, we know that the jurisdiction is Fulton County. So Fulton County does have a DA's office or a solicitor's office, and they do have advocates. They have a big advocate victim witness department
Program.
there.
Yeah.
And they may not reach out like Douglas. Douglas County is smaller, and so we're more intimate with our victims. But Fulton County does have a victim witness unit in which you do have the right to call and say, can I have, who's my advocate on the case, and I'd like to speak to an advocate.
And that, on that note, that's the other thing. A lot of times people think, well, I talked to the police officer, I gave my report, and then I talked to an investigator one time, and I gave him my report, and they think it stops there. but it doesn't. So if an arrest is made in a case, then you call the DA's office and you say, my name is, I'm trying to see who's on my case, and they'll let you know who your prosecutor is, they'll let you know who the advocate is. And that's one way as college students you can stay informed, just knowing the fact that you have the right to do that and that you are able to do that.
How do you think college students can stay safe and away from crimes?
Well, girl,
Well, being that we're in Atlanta,
that's a loaded question right
I mean,
there.
it's just like
But
bad things happen to good people. So
Yeah.
regardless of the fact, I would say stay safe. On campus,
now I will tell you, because okay, so as a former CAU student, I was on campus at night because I came to school at night. I was in the graduate program. I worked full time, so there were times that we were here late at night in the computer lab, or over by Thayer Hall in the computer lab, or even here at the library. You know, you walk in pairs. You don't go, even if your dorm is straight across the street, you don't walk down the street by yourself. You know, especially when it's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, you know, during the final hours when the library open all night long. You don't walk alone. I think that's the biggest misnomer that young people make, is that they have this idea that, well, it happened to her, but it's not going to happen to me. You know, you don't walk and be on your cell phone at night looking down or talking like this where you're not listening to the things that are going on around you. That's for females, even males, because males get robbed and shoes taken and everything these days. I also think accountability. There's a thing called being a bystander. When you see a crime taking place, when you see somebody getting jumped or getting robbed, don't pull out your cell phone and just start recording to place it on your YouTube or Instagram. How about you dial 911 and you say there's a crime taking place at the corner of, and you look at the street sign and you report it. You know, you can remain anonymous if you want to, but I think that's the big key. One of the things I told the high school students, because we were told that it's a big thing in high school, dating abuse. That these boyfriend-girlfriend situations are occurring in high school where they're physically abusing their person. And I'm like, high school? Okay. So one of the things we talked about with them was, if you got a friend who's saying, yeah, this bruise came from Johnny who hit me, you know, because he got mad at me, da-da-da-da-da. I think as a friend, you first talk to that person. If you're truly concerned, there are different people that you can go to express. Well, on campus, you got professors, you got counselors, you know, here on campus, and I think you need to utilize what you have.
and on the police website, they do have you all's handbook as far as staying safe. They have a good extensive little
List.
advice on how to
Yeah.
stay safe and what to do, how to report the crime. So that is very informative. So if you hadn't read it, it's good to go on the
Go
website
online and
go
read
ahead
it.
and read it and know what avenues to take if a crime did take place, especially sexual assault victims. You may be embarrassed, you may not want to
Right.
go, but just know, do not go to the hospital to get a forensic medical examination if you don't have insurance or you feel like you can't pay, because by law a sexual assault kit is done and the victim is not to be charged for that period. So,
Right.
For the last two questions, if you could describe your job in one word, what would it be, and how can people get in contact with you?
I'm taking.
my one word is I say rewarding. Like we were just discussing, Pam was like, you have to have some type of compassion. So if you're the type that look at the news and there's a shooting and it just don't bother you, this is not the job for you.
Correct.
You know, so if I see something and it just shocks me, you like, oh my goodness, you know, you like, man, oh my goodness, I can't believe, you know, and you hear it because it's like every day, we do this every day, but it's always a new, like I might have seen the same case, same thing, but every time I hear it can't come again, I'm bothered by it. That bothers me. And so you have to have some type of compassion for people that you don't know, you know, just like that you don't know, And just like you just met me today, I love you. I love people, and so it's just like you just have to have and it's rewarding to help people and to see them be resilient and come out of something that I guess because of my experiences in life, how I feel like I have come out of, and then you see somebody else coming up out of it, and it's rewarding for me.
Well, I guess for me, it is the word compassion. I am a native of Atlanta. I have grown up here, right down the road, southwest side of Atlanta, Cascade, Avon Avenue area, but I'm telling too much information. We can edit that out. Okay. But for me, it is compassion because you have to have a heart for people, and not just black people, but you have to have a heart for people. I don't care based on religion, their skin color, their ethnicity, their culture, because when a person has been victimized, that could be your mom, that could be your cousin, that could be your neighbor down the street, it could be anybody in your vicinity that you know. And so you want that person to be treated with compassion and understanding, and you want that person to know that we care, that somebody cares. And so while we on this side show that support to them, the prosecutor's job is to seek justice for them. And so the two work hand in hand, because if you're a victim and you come to seek help from somebody who's supposed to be seeking justice for you, and they're rude to you, or they're not understanding about your plight in life at that point in time and how this situation has impacted you. There are some people who aren't able to work and don't want to leave their house, who become extremely fearful of different things, and so they have to get on medication. It impacts their jobs, it impacts their ability to go to school. So understanding that we all as a human society have issues and things happen to us, and that we need to exercise compassion. I just think that's for me, that is. And the other piece of it is seeing that justice does take place, that the defender is held accountable.
And that's one of the rights. A victim has a right to be treated with fairness
and
and dignity.
dignity.
So
Yes.
So that's a right, and even though we all should be treated that way,
Right.
and treat each
On
other
a
that
normal
way,
basis,
right?
yeah.
But they do have the right to be treated with fairness and dignity.
So how can people get in contact with the book?
So we are with the Douglas County District Attorney's Office, and our number there is 770-920-7292. My name is Tanya Corbin.
And I am Pamela Roberts.
If there's something, we do deal with just the crimes that happen in Douglas County, but if someone has a question or we need to refer them somewhere else and find out where they need to go, give us a call and we can help with that also.
And that often happens. People call into the office because they may have been a victim in the past in a crime that's closed, and they'll say, hey, my neighbor is so-and-so and so. Can you help? Sure, we can. So that's what we do.
Well, thank you guys for coming out today to the interview, and don't forget to follow WST Radio on all social media platforms at WST Radio Station.